Hey, welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking about one of my most beloved cameras, the Fuji Instax Wide 300. Bit of a mouthful, but we got there in the end. So this camera is basically the big daddy to the immensely popular Instax Mini, which I'm sure you've either seen or used at one point or another. And when I picked this camera up about 4 years ago, I don't think there was any particular reason I went for the Instax Wide. I think I was just lazy and picked up whatever the first Polaroid camera I could find, and I picked it up for about 120 Australian dollars. And just as a point of reference, the film used in the Instax Wide is a little over double the size of the film that's used in the Instax Mini. But before jumping into the positives and negatives of this camera and showing you guys some of the photos that I've taken with it, I just want to spend the next 60 seconds powering through a quick walkthrough of the camera's controls, just for anyone who might have picked up the camera just recently or is looking to pick it up in the future. The camera runs off 4 AAA batteries, which can be accessed via the side panel of the camera. And the on-off switch for the camera is located at the front of the hand grip near the shutter button. The camera features 3 exposure compensation modes that give you a bit of control with how your image is going to look, and is controlled by the way of a button on the back of the camera labelled L and D. When the screen on the back of the camera that usually displays how many photos you have reads no letter, it means that the camera is in normal exposure compensation mode. If you press the button once, a little L will show up on the display screen, which is what you want to use to brighten your images. If you press it a second time, a D will show up on the back of the screen. This is what you'll use to darken your images. Located next to the L and D button is a button with a little flash symbol. This gives you the ability to manually fire off the flash. However, if the camera thinks that the scene that you're shooting is too dark, it will still automatically fire off the flash, so there's no way to override this. The camera also features 3 separate focus distances. 2 of these focus distances can be accessed by turning the ring at the front of the camera to the left. The first distance focuses between 90 centimeters and 3 meters, and the second focuses between 3 meters to infinity. And the third setting is for taking photos up close. It shoots between 0 to 40 centimeters. However, you do have to use a little attachment that comes with the camera. I have actually never used mine. I just dug this out of the box to show you guys. I'll do a quick little unboxing. And this is the cool little thing that it comes with to take up close photos. And the film's super easy to load with this camera. All you need to do is pop open the back panel, align the yellow strip on the film cartridge with the yellow strip that's inside of the back of the camera, close the panel, and then just take a single photo which will pop out the exposure sheet and you're good to go. Once you take a photo, put it in your pocket or leave it in a dark area for about 2 minutes. Once you come back to it, you should have a fully developed photo. Alright, I think that was about sub 60 seconds, but hopefully you have an idea of how to use the camera if you're going to pick one up for yourself. Now I'm going to delve into some of the positives and negatives of this camera. While I'm doing so, I'm going to throw up some of the photos that I've taken with this camera on the screen. First, I do want to talk about a few downsides of the camera. The first downside is actually a downside for Polaroid cameras in general. So obviously I'm doing a really great job at selling you guys on the Polaroid cameras. The thing is, you probably will end up running yourself into a small pocket of debt shooting Polaroid film, particularly if you end up shooting as much as I have in the past few years. As I mentioned, while the camera was $120, just a 10-pack of the film runs you $20 on its own. However, that's why I'd recommend buying your film in bulk. You can buy them in about 2 or 3 packs at a time, and you actually end up saving yourself a bit of money in the long run. Now, I've run in the ballpark of around 200 to 300 Polaroids through this camera. So that would be... Yeah, I'm definitely not going to add it up because that's going to make me way too sad. The next thing about this camera, which is incredibly obvious, is the size. It's in no way ergonomic or compact. And it's almost as if they took a look at the SX70 and thought to themselves, wow, what an incredibly compact and easy to carry camera. Let's do the complete opposite of that. And the only upside to carrying this camera around is if you do happen to get robbed, at least you're wielding a genuine brick of plastic that's sure enough to take anyone down. You also need to make sure you're adjusting your composition accordingly, which is common for quite a few Polaroid cameras. You're not shooting through the lens of the camera. You're shooting through a plastic viewfinder that's sitting to the upper left of the lens, which means depending how close you are to your subject, you need to adjust your composition accordingly. And the final thing, which I touched on a little bit earlier, is the lack of control over the flash. Whilst you do have the option to manually set off the flash, you have no say in whether or not the flash fires in a dark scene. So the button on the back of the camera is pretty much just the embodiment of when your little brother won't stop nagging you to play Xbox, so you just give him a controller that's not plugged in, just so he thinks that he has some sort of control. And let's be honest, what the f do you know about exposure? Leave that up to the professional. Which in this case, the professional is of course the internal light meter in a $120 hunk of plastic. But on the upside, it means you end up with some really nice pieces of art like this. Now that I'm done talking a lot about this camera, I do want to talk about some of the positives. To the camera's credit, as big and bulky as it is, it's pretty lightweight and it fits pretty nicely in your hand. This probably has something to do with the fact that it's made out of cheap flimsy plastic, but anything that makes my camera bag lighter, I'm not complaining. And the control that it allows for in its 3 separate focusing modes is pretty impressive. However, with that being said, I'm not usually shooting Polaroids with the mindset of taking the sharpest image possible. Another bonus is in regards to Polaroid film in general. You don't need to worry about getting it developed, which means if you are stuck inside or you're relatively limited in means of getting your film developed, then shooting Polaroids might be an option that you want to explore. My final point isn't actually in regards to Instax Wide in particular, but more so Polaroid cameras as a whole. And if you don't already own a Polaroid camera, you should definitely try and pick one up, regardless of if you're a photographer or not. Now, it might sound a little odd, but sitting down and pulling out a big box of physical images is something that's quite nostalgic now. It's something I used to do all the time as a kid, looking at photos of my parents and their friends and family. But with the rise of digital and cloud storage, it's something I hadn't done in quite some time. And it's only really something you can appreciate with hindsight, once you have the ability to look back on these images once enough time has passed. So if there's one little bit of advice I can leave you with after today's video, it's to get your hands on a Polaroid camera and start collecting physical memories. It doesn't have to be the Instax Wide or an expensive Polaroid camera, just whatever you can afford or get your hands on. It may run you into a bit of a bad credit rating with the amount you spend on film, but at least you'll have a pretty good box of memories to look back on. But that about does it for today's video, so I hope you enjoyed taking a look at those photos, and I hope you're considering picking up a Polaroid camera for yourself. If you have any questions about this camera or about photography in general, make sure you reach out to me or leave a comment below. And whilst you're there, if you could leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already, that would be awesome too. And until next time, see you later.